This is the Dull Man's Podcast, the podcast for dull men
and women
who get excited about dull things.
I'm Demetrius Deech, a stand-up comedian who will share his love of dullness with anyone who is prepared to listen. Now, I am just 1/3 of what you'll be listening to today.
I'm Faye and I'm a broadcaster, podcaster, celebrant, fine artist, media trainer, general dog's boggy.
Karate expert.
There's really nothing you can't do, Faye.
There isn't.
Nothing I can't do.
School prefect is Faye.
I was actually.
Yes, I knew it.
But that makes me sound like a goody two-shoes, but I wasn't.
But you're,
I've got a
dare
bit of
I
an
say
edge.
it, you're very good at everything you do. And I've seen your artistry work, and it was
Deech.
to the point where I questioned it for weeks. It's like, did you actually do this? Yes. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Who did this? Where did you get it from?
Yeah.
I want to buy one.
I was, a bit insulted about that. I was like, no, it's definitely me.
I could tell that you were insulted, actually.
So when we get to the stage of the podcast where we're discussing animal portraits, that
Yes.
could, Faye might get quite upset then. If we're claiming it's dull,
Well,
it's.
yeah, I think there's a whole section about pet portraits done badly.
Ah,
Oh, and who is the judge of whether they're good or bad?
the pet.
Yeah, one bark for good,
Yeah,
two barks for
that's
bad.
right. If the dog eats it, it's good.
And who's that over there?
Yes, I'm the final third of the podcast. I'm Dave Harris, and I'm the producer. So, what are we going to talk about today, Deech?
I want to talk about women's representation in film.
Okay, that sounds, well, it doesn't sound dull, actually. It sounds quite interesting. And Faye, what are you going to talk about your frustration today?
Faye's frustration is the little slips you get through the post from your bank with your new PIN on it.
Oh, good. Well, that sounds interesting. And I'm bringing fish and chips to the party because I'm
Ooh.
going to talk about Harry Ramsden.
Salt and vinegar, sir?
Yes, please.
Dave, you want to talk about fish and chips, Harry Ramsden's. What's brought that in today? What are you nostalgic about today?
Well, I'm a great fan of fish and chips, as I guess most Brits are, aren't we, really? It's sort of national food after curries, of course.
Yep.
But, fish and chips is great. It's a real treat. Try not to have it too often because, a lot of calories and all that sort of thing. But I love it, absolutely love it. Bit of haddock and chips is my favourite. I don't know if you the cod haddock debate. I mean, that's another thing, isn't it? But
Can you tell the difference?
I was just going to say, I don't
yeah.
think I can tell the difference.
can't.
Oh, you can, yeah.
The
Haddock
only
has a
bit of
stronger
difference I
taste.
can taste is the 25p.
Well, if you put more vinegar on it.
Oh.
But yeah, anyway, that's haddock or cod is a discussion for another day. But the reason I'm...
People can't wait for that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's really going to push up the viewing figures. The reason I'm bringing fish and chips to the table
Yes.
today, not literally, sadly, is Harry Ramsden's. Now,
Okay.
does everybody know what Harry Ramsden's is? Do you both know what Harry Ramsden's is?
Well, I had to ask. I knew I recognised the name, and I didn't know whether he was like some footballing coach or something.
fair
And I was
enough.
like, yes, I do, but I've never been. I've never been to one
It's
of
fair
those
enough.
restaurants.
Fair enough, because I think one makes assumptions that everybody knows the same things as you, and of course they don't. But
I do. I'm from a fish and chip shop background, so I definitely know about Harry
fish
Ramsden.
and chip shop background.
Yeah.
What does
Family
that
business.
involve?
Family business.
Really?
Yeah.
What, in Cyprus?
In Cheltenham.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were they called?
Oh.
What was the chip shop called?
A Cambray's Fish Cafe.
Oh. And is it still there?
No.
Oh, okay. But it was. Did you work there as a child?
I certainly did. Yeah, I was serving fish and chips. I started when I was about 3 years old.
Harry Ramsden's, which you may or may not have heard of, claimed to be the oldest fish and chip shop in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually founded in 1928, I believe, in a place called Guiseley in West Yorkshire.
Okay.
And the reason this, you think, so what, but the reason I'm interested in it is because I spent part of my childhood in Ilkley in Yorkshire. And I remember my mum and dad taking me and my sister to Harry Ramsden's in Guiseley.
The original Harry Ramsden.
Original Harry
Okay.
Ramsden. Because
Describe it.
well, that's the interesting thing, because it was enormous. Apparently, it originally started in a sort of hut, but then it was so successful that Harry himself, presumably, they got these new premises, which were palatial. That's the only way of describing them. And they came complete with carpets and oak panelling on the walls, and chandeliers and tablecloths. And you could still buy takeaway chips there, but you could go in and sit down and have a proper meal in a proper restaurant, which was still fish and chips and mushy peas and all the other things that you can get with fish and chips. But the thing I really remember as a kid was you always got a cup of tea and a slice of white bread and butter.
Cup of tea works really well.
It does.
With fish
through
and
the
chips.
grease,
It
doesn't
does.
it?
If any of our listeners have themselves been to that Guiseley or went to that, I don't think it exists anymore, but went to that Guiseley fish and chip shop in the sort of 70s or 80s, I'd love to hear their experience.
This was me. Sorry if I didn't pay.
Yeah.
Is that near the coast then, Guiseley? Is it?
No,
No.
it's not. No, it's a town. It's probably an industrial town somewhere in West Yorkshire. I don't know much about it, to be honest, but I just remember going there as a kid, and I did go back once as an adult, and it didn't seem to have changed much. It seemed smaller to me as an adult, because as a child things.
And it doesn't exist anymore.
Well, it doesn't exist as Harry Ramsden's anymore. Harry Ramsden's
Burger King.
Yeah, no, it's called. I looked this up because I wanted to find out if it still existed, and apparently, it's now owned by the Weatherby Whaler Group, who despite that rather strange title, are a fish and chip chain.
Oh,
and
okay.
so it's still a fish and chip shop.
Whale burger.
Yeah,
Some lovely
that's
whale
right.
burgers.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know whales
the
are
menu.
mammals, not fish. But anyway, but the Weatherby Whaler Group own it now, apparently, and I believe it's still open. But I've not been up there for a long time.
Oh, wouldn't it be nice if a listener can send us in a photo of
That would
something?
be great. That would be great. But a few interesting facts. It held 250 people, this restaurant. So that was and it was in the Guinness Book of World Records, the biggest fish and chip shop. And Harry Corbett of Sooty fame
Yes.
I remember.
was apparently the nephew of Harry Ramsden and used to play the piano in the fish and chip shop.
Nice. That is
Isn't
a
that
nice
That's
touch.
bonkers.
With Sooty on his hand while he's
Well,
playing.
that
Yeah.
history.
Yeah, only
does
two
not-
notes.
Beep, beep,
Yeah,
beep,
yeah.
beep, beep, beep.
Sooty
Yeah,
on one hand,
headbutt
and
the
sweep
black
on the
note.
other, presumably. So
Yeah.
that's four notes.
Yeah.
But no, history doesn't record whether Sooty was there, but Harry Corbett himself was. And anyway, and for years and years, from 1928 until about 1980, late 1980s, it was just this one place in Guiseley, this huge shop, which people from all over Yorkshire and probably much further afield came to. And then they got taken over by Merryweather's in 1988, and the whole story changed then, because then they thought, we got to franchise this, we got to go, and they became an international company.
Yeah.
And over the following years, with they presumably put a lot of money into it, and the Harry Ramsden brand became international, and they had branches in Hong Kong and Saudi Arabia. And obviously all over the UK, and you could find them in most service stations. Talked about service stations on our last episode. Well, in Harry Ramsden's appeared in a lot of. They've gone now.
Maybe airports. I've seen
Yes,
them in
airports.
airports.
Yeah, you would have. They were in
Yeah.
Heathrow, I'm sure. And
You don't get Sooty in there though, playing piano.
no, the piano didn't go with the
Pay extra
franchise.
for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they became this brand, and you could buy. I think you still can buy Harry Ramsden's fish and chips in a supermarket and things like that.
It's
Yes.
got a really sort of posh reputation though nowadays, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And that's
it's-
the bit that I could never understand. It's like fish and chips are fish and chips.
But if
aren't
you
they?
know their background, it sort of makes more sense. Having
Does
this
that make
posh
the
restaurant.
chips taste better?
Well, that would be you'd have to be the taster to make that decision. I've eaten Harry Ramsden's. Post the expansion, I went to a Harry Ramsden's. There was one next to Cribbs Causeway in Bristol. There was a big one there. I think it's gone now. I've eaten there, and there was one down just off the motorway near Exeter. I remember going there when we used to go for family holidays down to Devon, and yeah, it was a nice experience. The chips, and they still did the tea and the bread and butter, which was lovely, and they had chandeliers.
I don't get seduced by names, by brands, by anything like that. I love the chippy on the corner, the local one, that has a quirky name. In fact, me and my daughter tried out a new chip shop the other week, and it's called the Nippy Chippy.
Nice, I like
And
it.
the nice thing about the Nippy Chippy, it was a really beautiful evening. They have a wooden bench sitting outside the chip shop. You can sit directly in the sunshine whilst they're making your chips. But I'm sure this is the case with every chippy.
Yeah.
Why are sauces so expensive? £1.80 for a little tub of gravy.
But the best place, in my opinion, to eat fish and chips,
Yes.
out of the paper,
Yes.
is on a bench,
Yes.
looking out to sea on the seafront.
Right.
With the
At the seaside, the
seagulls
seagulls.
attacking
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
nicking your fish just before you put it in your mouth.
I controversially, and this is quite controversial, prefer thinner, more French fry style chips
I do
to
too.
the big fat chips. Oh,
I don't like big fat chips.
Oh my word! Is there like a little group we can hang out? Because I get death threats and all sorts.
Thin.
Yeah,
I like matchstick thin.
We're a bit crispy as well.
Yeah.
French
I don't
fries.
like big fat chips.
I mean, I love French fries too, but big fat chips have their place. I think.
Well, they do have their place.
With and I think if you're eating them out of paper with the fish and the mushy peas or the curry sauce, it's got to be the fat chips then.
So cod chips is my go-to. I do like curry sauce on there. Occasionally I'll treat myself to either pickled egg or pickled onion. What about you two?
I used to like a battered sausage or a fish cake.
I thought you would, actually.
But I've gone off the battered sausages.
Something
fish
about
cake's
you
nice.
looks like you might be in... You've gone off fish cakes?
No, I've gone off battered sausages.
You've gone off the battered sausage.
I like
Faye, what's your
like
opinion
fish
on a battered
goujons or a cod and chips with curry sauce. Got to have ketchup as well. Sometimes I have multiple sauces on one plate, so it can be mayo, curry sauce.
Yes.
Had gravy the other week, ketchup.
Yes.
And what was the other one I was going to say? Tartar sauce.
Tartar sauce. Yeah, tartar
Black
sauce adds
sauce.
it.
What's that?
You see,
Sorry, did I say black sauce? Brown sauce.
I think with tartar sauce, you are straying over into pub grub there.
Tartar sauce.
Yeah. I think you see, as to me, that's not really chip shop. That's pub grub.
They do sell it though. Some chip shops
I'm
sell
not
it.
denying that. Yeah, chip shops sell all sorts of things. But for me, the traditionalist, I don't think that's
some tartar sauces are quite potent, aren't they? Where you have a little bit, but you end up with a nosebleed. I had a really good chip experience the other day. So I took my daughter to watch the Aston Villa ladies football team against West Ham ladies football team. She's 6. My daughter's 6 years old. So at the moment she thinks I'm cool. I don't know how much longer, how many more years left there are.
Not long.
No, approximately
6 1/4.
She's 6 1/4 now. You're just giving me days. You're just giving me days left. No. I'm hoping it's going to stray into years and not months, because she's the last remaining person who thinks
has any respect for you at all.
Has any respect for me. She thinks I'm cool, and I took her to. I'm an Aston Villa fan, so I took her to watch the ladies' football match, and it was really good. It's a fantastic. I urge anyone, take your sons, take your daughters to watch a ladies' football match. It's such a great atmosphere. And at half time, I treated her to some chips and hot chocolate. She loves hot chocolate, so that was a real good treat. And on the chips, because they were more like French fries, and I like that. And they also, we talk about guilty pleasures sometimes. Mine is cheap, watered down tomato sauce. There's something about that, and it was
really vinegary, isn't it?
It's a bit vinegary, yeah. And you just put that on in just light doses around the chips, not in a blob, but just around the chips. And it was a really nice, and they were absolutely fantastic.
Oh, this is a good subject actually. When you're sharing chips, where do you put the sauce?
Yeah, good point.
Well, I like a blob on the side, and then my husband comes along. All over.
I'm with you on that, Faye.
I want to control how much sauce goes on my chip.
Okay.
But can I just say,
you.
tomato sauce should not be translucent.
Well, this was translucent.
According to who? The Food and Safety
according to
me.
You
shouldn't be able to see
I
through
agree with
your
you.
tomato
Yeah,
sauce.
if it's pale pink.
If you can see through it.
It's watered down.
Rubbish.
Yeah.
So, Faye, you are going to talk us about this week's frustration.
Yes. So, really frustrating whenever you lose anything, whether it's your keys, your phone, or your purse.
That's the worst.
And my husband says that I've lost quite a few bank cards recently, therefore my purse, my wallet. I don't think I have, but quite a few things. I had my bank account compromised. I got scammed.
Oh no.
I got scammed. I felt really stupid and then had to change all my bank cards. But I was in a pub the other week. I hadn't even been drinking. I actually ordered a cup of tea.
Okay.
It was during the
not Harry
daytime.
Ramsden,
No. And I lost my pub.
Oh, it's because you were sober. You shouldn't be going into a pub staying sober. You're gonna have an awful time.
Exactly. I lost my purse.
Your punishment.
Told the pub. I put it on the local Facebook group saying, lost and found in Nailsworth. Please keep an eye out for it. It's got everything in, my driving licence. Not a lot of cash in there. And you just know it's just like the nightmare, the headache of changing all those cards and waiting for the pin to come through. Anyway, I cancelled everything that night because it didn't turn up. Headache. The next day it turned up, of course, and it got wedged between a table and the wall. No idea how it got there. So I've been waiting quite a while now.
Sorry, is this the interesting bit going on?
Shut up. I'm just building up.
I'm excited.
And so... spoke to the bank. Yep, you'll get a new card, and then the pin, not number, the pin will follow on a separate piece of paper through the post.
Yes,
yeah. And we all know what that looks like, don't we? It's the little slip that comes through. You peel it off, and there's your pin number written on the slip.
Yeah.
Though it is so, I don't know whether it's an age thing, I'm getting old, but I cannot read the numbers on that slip. So it's sort of like tracing paper.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? A bit plasticky, but very, very thin.
You already feel a wally because you've lost you've lost your bank card.
Exactly.
And they're adding to the humiliation.
Yeah. So you're peeling this tiny little thing off. It's the size of a stamp, a postage stamp.
Yeah.
And then you're holding it up to the light and there's dots all over it and your number is slightly different shading.
Yeah, it's illegible.
So 4
basically.
numbers. Yeah.
Hey, I think you're doing it wrong. Are you not supposed to put it on a plain white piece of paper to see it through?
Is that how you do it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm holding it up to the light.
No.
Really?
Hang on. But are there instructions? Does it tell you to do that?
I don't ever read.
You don't read the instructions. It starts off,
so do you
Dear
think I'm
Wally,
doing it wrong?
It starts off, Dear Wally, you have lost your bank card again. We are getting bored of this and you're costing us a fortune in plastic.
So we're making it increasingly more difficult to see.
You
but
peel
I
it
put
off.
it on different surfaces.
Oh, you did?
I'm sure I did,
plain white surface.
No, I think you're right, Faye. I've had this experience as well where it is frustrating. You get this thing and you peel it off and you do everything right and you can't, and it's really hard to read the number.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of sort of visually impaired people.
Yeah, or older people.
Older people. People my age.
Yeah. Or even my age.
So that is my frustration. I think I know what my number is now, but I don't know.
69, of course it is, Faye. We can work that one out.
My favourite numbers.
Yes.
Have you tried it? Have you tried it in the cash point yet? Right.
Yet.
So you have to report back to us.
And
episodes.
Every time I lose a card now, new pin, I get that anxiety. Is it going to work? Is it going to work?
So your husband thinks you're a serial card loser.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, and I've only lost them. Yeah, I've only lost them once, and then found, and then my account was compromised. So that's only twice that I've had to change in the history of me owning a bank account. But he does exaggerate.
Yeah, they do that, don't they, husbands?
They do. They certainly do.
They exaggerate about everything.
Everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I exaggerate 1 million times a day.
So I've come from the world of broadcasting and...
What, today?
Yeah. Straight from the studio, darling. And early days of starting off in broadcasting, it was difficult being a woman in a male-dominated newsroom.
Yeah, we've spoken about this, yeah.
And up until quite recently, I've been monitoring, actually, everything, you know, when it comes to the gender divide, whether it's watching the news... You know, how many male presenters versus female or reporters or contributors. And I do little audits. So I know this is something that you're interested in, Deech, but with films.
Yeah, it is. I think perhaps now I have a daughter, I probably do look to see what female representation is in any industry. And I was looking at this in films. It came up to me. And the female representation in films is less now than it was in the 1930s.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mean there are simply less women in the film.
So the statistic which was being used is something called the Bechdel test, which has all they are looking for in that is a conversation in a film between two female characters, where each character is a named part, so they have a name, they're not just waitress, and the conversation has to not be about a man, which is a bit subjective because they're, you could say at what point is the conversation about a man or something like that.
Yeah, but I kind of understand what they're getting at.
Yeah.
There, so the plot is not revolving around a hero figure.
Correct. So I'll go through some films and you can say, we can have a look at whether they passed or not. Films which are still relevant today, okay? So, The Silence of the Lambs, do you think that passed that test or didn't?
Gosh, that's an interesting one. With
Jodie
Clarissa.
Foster.
Yeah. I would have thought it would pass that test.
Yeah, it did. It did. Forrest Gump.
No.
Correct. Now, this is the other interesting one. Schindler's List.
No.
It actually did, even though the proportion of female dialogue in that film, I think it didn't even have 100 words. But obviously it's representing something, so, but there was a brief conversation, so it did pass the test. Braveheart?
No,
of course not. So I think that just shows the...
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But one thing that I've noticed, and like you, Deech, I've got daughters, so
yeah.
I do take an interest in this stuff, and probably, it's not something I'm proud of that I've only become aware of it once I've got daughters. I should have always been aware of it, but I certainly am more aware of it now.
Yeah, I think it does.
And I think watching movies now and watching movies with my daughters, I've become more aware of female protagonists.
Yeah.
They're, and I'm thinking of things like The Hunger Games, or there's some of the Marvel films feature female heroines and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I wonder whether the balance is starting to become a little bit better because of those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think so. But it seems that they'll just choose the protagonist. As you say, to put that in, the superhero. And it has to be forced, and that is a good thing. But just the sort of...
Yeah. Have you seen The Marvels, which is the latest sort of...
No, because I'm not a child.
Ooh, there's a controversial statement. Well, I love the Marvel films, so I am a child. But the Marvels, the latest movie, has 3 female protagonists.
Okay.
The 3 leads are all female, and they're great. They're all really good actors, and it's very good. The film itself actually is in some ways a little disappointing. It's not the best of the Marvel films by any means, but it is great to see that it is totally about these 3 women and their heroics and that sort of thing. And although there are some men in the film, Nick Fury is in it inevitably, because Nick Fury's in virtually every Marvel film.
Okay.
But and he has a big part in this one. But yeah, that's an example. But I think there are more and more of these films coming along.
There was one of the superhero films, and you're going to have to help me remember which one it was. It either starred Ryan Gosling or Ryan Reynolds. I cannot tell the difference.
Probably Ryan Reynolds. So it's probably Deadpool.
Okay, and there was a female in the film, but I can't remember the actress's name. But she wore all black. So who would that have been?
I'm just saying.
Anyway, in the junkets, when they sort of speak to them and ask them questions, it was just the female was getting asked over and over again if she wore underwear under her like black sort of costume.
Oh, I've seen this. Yeah,
and she's like, I'm fed up of being asked this.
Was it Scarlett Johansson?
Probably or possibly.
Because she often wears all black, doesn't she? Sort of skin tight suit.
I will Google image.
Anyway, that's what hasn't changed.
Yeah.
The obsession with our media for what the female looks like and what she's wearing and what she's wearing underneath.
And the health regime or fitness regime leading up to that film. Tell us about that. It's like, well, would you ask,
does
male
does Superman get asked why he wears his underpants on the outside?
Regularly.
Very good.
Anyway, it's Well, I hope it is changing, but I mean, I think there are still some very Neanderthal attitudes in the media, and in the broadcast media as well, where we come from, Faye, and of course, Me Too is not that long ago and is still very much, relevant. So there's
well, I mentioned my audit earlier, and this was 6:00 news on the BBC, and there were 7 male, so a mixture of male presenter, and 6 reporters, all male, and 1 female reporter.
Now that's interesting, because on the
half an hour
on the later news, I find the opposite, which is good.
It was a bank holiday Monday, so it could have just been a rota.
I suppose it's dangerous to draw conclusions from one thing, but it's, you have to obviously survey over time and all that sort of thing. But and clearly there are some celebrity female newsreaders out there like Sophie Rayworth and people like that. And remember Angela Rippon. I mean, that was a long time ago when she was such a big star.
But you must see this in the comedy circuit as well. Is it getting better? You see more female stand-up comics?
Oh,
on the bill?
100%.
Yeah.
And there is a strong movement to always have a female on every bill, which is good for the audience, because I don't think the audience should always have you want to see the perspective of a female, but there's a lot less females get into comedy.
So it's harder to book.
Oh yeah.
Female, because they're just less female comedians around.
So I know a lot of bookers and promoters who book comedy, and they say it's really, really difficult to get a good female act on the bill. When they try, they're just fully booked. All the good female comedians are basically booked, or could be booked 7 days a week if they wanted to, and it's advertised as such. Female required for this lineup.
Faye, you were telling me yesterday about a female comedian who was also a writer, and remind me who that was and why she's so brilliant. Bridget Christie.
Bridget Christie, yeah. So she's been doing stand-up for years and years and years, and she was up for a TV BAFTA, just a couple of days ago for Best Female Comedy Performance, and she wrote The Change and performed in The Change. It was on Channel 4, all about a woman going through the menopause, and it was hilarious. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Sadly, she didn't get the award.
Okay.
I went to see her at a local venue recently, and her stand-up was I was just crying with laughter all the way through. It was sublime. It was brilliant. But these people are working really flipping hard behind the scenes. And I just feel like it's her moment. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. I remember years and years ago going to the Edinburgh Festival and seeing Mel and Sue.
Yes.
Before they were well known at all, and they just because that's the nature of Edinburgh. You see people who are coming up through the ranks and starting out, and they were. But what was so unusual was because they were female. It was not only were they female, but there were 2 of them on stage.
There's 2 of them, yeah.
And it was a great show. It was really, really funny. But it was hard to find, if you went up to Edinburgh in those days, literally say, all right, I think I'll go and see some female comedians. There really weren't that many.
No, there wouldn't have been, at that point in time, before we would have had Joe Brand on the circuit. And so was that their days pre-French and Saunders? Because French and Saunders saw them at the Edinburgh Festival and then booked them for their own show.
I was sitting next to French and Saunders, actually.
Were you?
Are you serious?
No.
I did a gig once at an army base, and just so you can work out who the regiment was, they're based in Hereford. And
Salvation Army.
Yeah. One said, "You're brave, mate." I was like, "Well, yeah."
Not elite comedy, sadly.
So, did it go down well?
Yeah, it went down well. Always does.
Time for us to say goodbye.
I think so. Thank you very much for having us this week. Hopefully we'll have you back next week on the Dull Man's podcast, a podcast for dull men and women who get excited about dull things. I've been Demetrius Deech.
I've been Faye Hatcher.
And I've been Dave Harris. See you next time.
I'm looking forward to the listen back of this, because I pathetically joked that Faye's number was 6969, and then Dave, your next comment was, "Faye, have you tried that?"
Yeah, but what you don't know is that I can cut all that out.
You can cut. You're in control of the knobs.